was out in the woods working today on a new hill plot. I cleared out all the brush. I trimmed up some trees and some underbrush and everything. I'm like, when do you get the chance to work out here on a deer blind in December? I got it already all frost seeded this spring.
Yeah.
So
Well, this, usually I'm dragging down trees out of the woods now and fighting snow and everything else. And it's like, now I can't because I'm having that hand surgery and I don't want to get a bunch of logs down and not be able to run my saw. So it's like,
right.
yesterday I just wandered around in the woods. Shot one grouse. I mean, dog
I had that
pointed it in a tree.
I had that done on this thumb here. The trigger finger.
Had that done.
Yeah, and I had that and carpal tunnel, and they reattached my bicep and they fixed my rotator cuff.
Oh geez, I don't feel so bad now. I haven't fallen apart quite as much as some people. How'd you tear the bicep?
I don't know. It's a clean tear. Torn.
Jim, Jerry wants to know if it's gonna be on Zoom.
Tell him, I will send him, I'll email him a link. So he can log in.
Okay.
It's 5.
It is. Ready, Jim?
Yes.
I will call the meeting to order. Let the minutes show that everybody is here except Jerry Porter. He will probably be viewing this at a remote site wherever he is. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting and the agenda and the December committee minutes. I put in the minutes for the December strategic planning or grant writing committee. Were there any other minutes to be included? Okay. I believe that Tom sent those out to everybody. So I'll entertain a motion.
Do we have to do this individually, Al, or can it be one?
You can make it all in one or
Okay.
however you want to make the motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting and the committee meeting minutes.
There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Recognition of visitor and visitor comments. We recognize you as visitors. Does anybody have any comments? Okay, quiet meeting. We'll move on. Educational and informational speaker, there are none tonight. And I don't think I had a couple of ideas. I think Tom had a couple of ideas for future speakers. I think that my two were we have actually she lives right in our community. The biologist for the DNR. She just got completed a survey, I think that she put out earlier this summer. Would be nice to have her come and speak. And the other person that I was thinking of, I just had a brain cramp. If you approve a Zoom connection, I'd like to connect with the the Red Cedar Lake Association. They're doing some really interesting things up on Red Cedar Lake, which is the headwaters of our lake and river. And so I'd be interested to see what they're doing. And they also are sitting on the Red Cedar Basin Partnership that we are members of. And they've discussed they're doing some testing and you know, they're doing some really interesting things. So, and they're a well-run organization. The other one I would put to that also, the Shatek Lakes Protection Group is doing some interesting things too. They were doing some testing of the muck or the lake bottom and trying to see if they could do something with the mud, but they wanted to know what it was, what it consisted of, and so they're doing some interesting things. So once we have the Zoom stuff, it would be kind of nice to have them, you know, give a little presentation. I think what that would do is I've listened to them and I've talked to them, but I think it would be nice to have other people listen to them, and it's another connection for us. So I would put forward those names and I'll reach out to them if you don't mind and try to set something up. Does anybody have any other names that they would like to put forward?
Bring your mic on. Other one, yeah.
I'm working on Cedar Lake, over by New Richmond. They've got a pretty active lake district, and I've emailed the president. His name is Warren Wood. I have not gotten an answer back from him yet.
Okay,
I volunteered him for January, February, or March
okay,
per your instructions.
okay. All right. You know what's gonna happen? We're gonna send out a whole bunch of emails and what they're all gonna say, well, we want March. But we'll do the best we can. That's three. I think that's a good start.
Didn't we also have a suggestion of a gentleman from Madison? I can't remember his name. Tom, you
Yeah,
remember?
that, I was telling Al earlier, that did not work out. He, when I described what we wanted, his, scope, if you will, of his discussion is too limited for what we want. He doesn't want to talk about fish and he doesn't want to talk about phosphorus. He only wants to meet with a few of us and he wants to limit questions. That doesn't really work in a public forum like this, so. I wanted to let everyone know of that and I will, thank him and decline. So.
The only other one I can think of, Al, is I know, Adam Mux has said that there's some weed harvesting, companies that would be more than happy to do a presentation too. And last I talked to him, he was telling me that those guys, can be part of the grant writing process too, because obviously that's what they do as a business. So they know the steps and all that good stuff.
Okay.
So.
That also brings to my mind, and I don't know if one of you guys sent it to me or if it was somebody making a proposal, but with there's those shoreline grants, shoreline improvement grants. There's a guy that's out there for that, and I think that he would be a good speaker to come in also.
Yeah.
Was that you that sent that to me?
Chris Gutting or Gooding, how I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's on the sedimentation ad hoc. He talked to me about knowing who to contact for that.
Yeah,
I'd have done something in Pierce County or something.
Yeah, I'd have to look back but those are those grants are much sought after, but I know the guys up at Red or in Chautauqua, they try to do about 5 of those 5 of those properties through a grant a year. So it'd be nice to have, again, that goes with the sedimentation to keep from the erosion.
So that's what they're doing, is they're targeting the major areas where sand is entering the river.
Well, and property owners that just have shoreline erosion and trying to provide them with some assistance to minimize shoreline erosion. So, I mean, that's gonna fall within our scope of our work eventually.
Yeah.
So, that would be another speaker. I'd have to look back in my thing and I'll look back through that and I'll reach out to that person also.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, moving on, commissioner and committee reports, communication from the commissioners. People have stuff to report?
I have been working for the last month with the DNR representative that was suggested to us. And I was disappointed by his suggestions. So what I have done is I've contacted Chase Cummings, and Chase is going to get us some information so we can move forward with the sedimentation ad hoc committee. What I'd asked Chase for was some information on the erosion sites that are up the Red Cedar River. Just to see what we're up against. So we have not met yet. We are going to meet that week of the 1st. Hopefully the 3rd or 4th is what I have suggested. I haven't heard back from everyone yet, but that's the plan.
Okay.
My name is Chuck Tack, and I'm on the Aquatic Vegetation Prevention Committee, along with Adam Mutz and Nick Maynor and Dow Redding. And a little background before this, Al had suggested that Adam and I call Alex Smith from the DNR, who's our mentor for our group. And we talked to him and kind of got a flow on what we should be doing. And he offered some help next summer in doing a weed survey on Tainter Lake, upper, lower, the whole thing, Hay River. And that's the first step to see which type of weeds you have and exactly how many acres you have and the best way to get rid of them. So he also said that for 2025, he would kind of grant us a break and we could only do what's called an experiment mechanical harvesting by just doing a weed permit application instead of the whole lake management plan. And the lake management plan will be real huge. So he kind of cut us a break on that. So then we met on December 5th, and we made up a list of which vendors we want to talk to. And Grant mentioned 2 of them. There's Nick from Aquatic System that sells harvesters. And then there's Nick from Aquatic Plant Management, who also sells and contracts out harvesting. So we talked to them, and then we set up a list of all the lake associations that have harvesters in the area. And we've started contacting them. We're about maybe a little over halfway through the contacts, and it's a learning process. It's a lot more out there than I thought. But we're going to meet, and we had 2 people come in at our last meeting on December 5th at the fire station. And we've got an upcoming meeting on January 15th. And hopefully we'll have a lot more of the Lake Association information into our shared spreadsheet that's on Google Drive. It's so hard to keep track of all this information from the different vendors and lake associations and lake districts. You just got to get it out on paper so you can refer back to it. And that's what we have. We have a shared spreadsheet and it's working really well. I just want to say one more thing, and Al touched on it too, that the Chetek Lake Protection Agency seems to be very active. And they're one of the ones that I still have to contact. And also Rice Lake, I just got off the phone this week and talked to Randy Bean up there, their operations manager for weed harvesting. And let me tell you that these people that are north of us are very, very involved and they are very well informed of what's going on. So I know sometimes a lot of people say, well, what's Rice Lake doing? What's Chetek doing on the Red Cedar? How are they going to help us? They have really strong organizations.
Thanks, Chuck. Jim, did you have anything to report from the buoy committee?
Yes.
Or I don't know what your group's title is.
I think it keeps changing a little bit. Our no wake zone and buoy placement ad hoc committee, we met on November 30th at the Pioneer. We added an additional member. Let's see, what am I gonna add? Admit Jerry to the room, so he's also with us. Let's see, what did we discussed again, the existing regulations. We also looked at Julie Lammer did a good job of going out to all of the boat landings, looking at the current signage that is out there, either referencing the no wake zones or other aspects of regulations on the lake, and they're all fairly different. And I think I'll save some of the discussion to when we get into the boat landing discussion a little bit later on some of the feedback I got from the county about how that is done. Our committee, one of the main things that we're going to act on at our next meeting, which will be January 10th at 5 o'clock at the Pioneer, will be whether we as a committee think that the Lake District should potentially take over that ordinance, or whether we should just continue to let it be part of the town of Tainter. So everybody's making some, doing some research and kind of leaning toward that. We got into a little bit on the weeds on a couple things. Pete dialed us back a couple times when we're going down a couple other areas, but he brought up the main point Pete brought up was basically we have to decide as a subcommittee, ad hoc committee, whether that this is something that we want to tackle. And if so, then go forward and just determine whether or not, how we would potentially write our own ordinance for the district and how that would kind of move forward from that point. So that's the determination we're going to make at our next meeting.
Can I add something to that, Jim?
Yes.
In Tainter Township's minutes, they did report, they did some checking, and we can assume they're the currently in place ordinance if we want.
Okay,
So,
good. Well, that's some additional fodder for
Yeah.
our, yeah, and that's a good thing to know, and we'll determine whether or not that's something that we would want to do. Cause then it gets into the whole thing about enforcement and maintaining things. But at this point, there really isn't any enforcement and there isn't a kind of a maintenance function in place. So, and we also discussed costs for potentially replacing all the buoys and adding buoys. And had a couple of we actually had one person come in for the presentation and then had a proposal from one or two other places for the cost of replacing the buoys. And whether we can kind of do that on a cycle so that it's not a big expense at once. But the folks at Docs said, you know, that's something that they could do. They could place it. It's kind of when they're already putting in docks and removing them at the same time. They'd be able to store them and maintain them as well. So all of that stuff sounds good, especially for Bob, who's having to do it all by himself.
Um, anything else for the buoy or no wake? Committee?
I just wanted to say that Donkey Docks has really made a strong presence on the lake. I think I saw somewhere on Facebook, they had 163 accounts now. So, you know, maybe down the road, you know, they would be the right ones to choose if you decide to go that route.
You know, and it might be something too that we could look at, you know, some sponsorship opportunities. I don't know that it's probably not legal to put like a sign on it, you know, brought to you by Jake's Supper Club, this, you know, buoy number 3, but there's probably other ways to do that recognition. So
Well, if they make a donation and they become a benefactor, I don't know why we wouldn't want to recognize them.
we'll find out at that point.
Except this is a university community and that may wind up in a dorm room someplace,
No,
especially if it had a name of a
if
bar on it.
they're anchored down the way they're supposed to be, then they're not moving.
I think we beg for forgiveness.
Yeah.
I think we need a buy a buoy campaign.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Well, I think we can, once we find out whether or not we're gonna get in the buoy business, then
Yep.
we can discuss
Yep.
all of that a little more seriously. The other, the other committee, the the fourth committee that we have going and the grant and the grant committee has really kind of turned into the strategic planning committee, just so that you know. So I've been kind of using those terms interchangeably.
It's kind of a catch-all.
Yeah, we met, and, got the survey done. And I shot it out to everybody for your input. The other thing is, I just wanted to say that, there was a meeting of the, Red Cedar Partnership and, it was online and because it's that time of year and people are, you know, swamped and the county people have grants and things like that. So it was a brief meeting, but it was a good meeting there again. The biggest thing to highlight on that meeting is the fact that we are one of 15 or 20 different organizations in that partnership that go from Red Cedar Lake Association all the way down to Menominee, city of Menominee. There's multiple representations from the DNR, 2 different counties. Actually, it covers Russ County and Chippewa County was there this time, and also a little bit of Sawyer County's involved too, but they typically don't, they haven't been participating since I've been there, but we had another meeting and the next meeting, I believe, is in February. But, so that's all I have to report. But there again, just to highlight the fact that there are 4 committees going. I would also stress the fact that on those 4 committees, committee chair people, we should get those minutes in so that we can get them posted on the website so that people know what's going on. So they can read the minutes of those meetings. So I think I sent that out to everybody. If you get that, shoot it to me and shoot it to Tom. I'll shoot it to Tom or shoot it directly to Tom and me at the same time. Doesn't matter.
Yep.
The only reason why I do that is so that when I put the agenda together, I can put the right dates down for the meeting. But I think those minutes are important to get so we can post those. And if you have any trouble posting meetings, call me too. I can certainly help with that. We should be getting bills from the Colfax. Have we gotten any bills from them yet?
Yeah, we paid one on November 22nd for
Okay.
$33.
Okay, It's gonna cost us about 30 bucks a meeting, but they're pretty good to work with. Just remember, the deadline is 10 o'clock on Friday. And if you send it at 10:30 on Friday, and it's gonna go in, and I always try to get it in a week before, or before the meeting, more than a day. I mean, realistically, we have to post it 24 hours. I just think it's good form to get it more than 24 hours.
Yeah, and keep in mind with the holidays, you probably want to get it in on Thursday
Yeah.
for the next couple.
And we're just talking about the posting the agendas at the
Right.
Colfax, right? Okay, got it.
Yeah, just copy our forms and get those in and it should play out fairly well. It's pretty easy. I got them now to send us a bill because before I had to use the credit card every time I posted a meeting. And so now now that we're recognized as a formal organization, they'll do that. Okay, with that, anything else as far as communication? Okay, treasurer's report. Grant, you're up.
Okay, we had two expenses since our last meeting on November 16th. The first one was for James Crave. He was the attorney at the annual meeting. It was $159.56. And then the aforementioned $33 expense for the Colfax Messenger. So that leaves us at $3,408.08 is the current balance.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
I make a motion to accept the treasurer report.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Discussion and action. Launch fees at boat landings. This was brought up in one of our meetings, and somebody has put that forward. And we said we'd put it on the agenda and talk about it, and so it's on the agenda. So, let's talk about it.
So I had, the boat landings are all county property. So, if we were to, do something with boat launches or fees, it would, we would have to obviously work out something with the county. I had a conversation a couple days ago with Scott, who's the facilities manager for Dunn County, who has basically, that's kind of his jurisdiction is the parks. Yes. And also with Ann Vogel, who is the chair of the facilities committee. And first I asked him kind of about the signage. A lot of the stuff with the signs at the parks were done prior to him basically taking over that department. But most of them involved various committees that have petitioned, or not petitioned, but at least gone before the facilities committee to come up with a proposal or a recommendation. He hadn't heard about, it hasn't crossed their mind to like charge for that type of stuff, but he's kind of aware of how in the Twin Cities area, that's pretty common that if you use a boat ramp there, you're paying a launch fee. So what it kind of boiled down to is that this would be something that if, we as a committee decide that we want to do this or come up with a plan, that we would just bring it to the facilities committee with a proposal and kind of say either we want to do this and we're going to have a boat launch fee and it's going to be, we're going to staff it, we're not going to staff it, it's going to be in the honor system, we're going to do a split with the county with it. However, we want to kind of come up with that is kind of where it is. They're, totally open to any suggestions or thoughts. I think that came up at a previous meeting that there's some rules regarding charging at boat ramps that has to go toward, I think, maintenance and staffing for that, for the ramp. I think that that could potentially include signage as well. That's been a discussion at our ad hoc committee on buoys, is that the signage doesn't really, it doesn't really promote like it's very clinical. It's not very tourist friendly. It's not user friendly. It could be done better to promote the no wake zone, could promote the fishing better. So this is also something that could go towards. So where we left it is just that, if we decide that this is a good idea, and if this is something that would again be another either ad hoc or subcommittee, then here we go. Here's something we can do. So the county's open to it.
Okay.
That's what it boils down to.
Other thoughts and comments from the board?
I always have something to say. Let's be honest. This was a topic when we were petitioning the lake, for the Lake District. There are two topics that came up. One was the no wake zone, and the other one was that the cost for improvements to the lake should not just come from the people that live on the lake, because there's a lot of people off the lake that use it on weekends and holidays and things like that, and I can certainly see their point. From what I understand, like you said, Jim, I think all the proceeds have to go to improvements on the boat landing. And I don't see that as a big problem, because we have one boat landing that is in terrible disrepair. And we could use lots and lots of money up at Champney Park to improve that, to make it usable, because currently it's not. It wasn't suggested by me at the meeting, but this was an idea that I had a year ago. And my thought was to put a type of electronic parking meter like they have in larger cities. And you can set up an account, or you can use your credit card, whatever. People on the lake would get a pass like you get with your dump pass. And they would have to display that in their car, on the windshield, whatever, something. And everyone else from off the lake would have to pay. I don't know where to set the dollar amount yet, but I think the idea has merit. And the gentleman that spoke up about it, I think came from the right spot when he was discussing it.
I saw one fee on one of the lake associations, and I can't remember which one. It might have been Shoot Pond up in Surrey, $3 for a launch fee. That's the only one I've seen so far, but I'm sure there's more out there.
I remember it when Jeff Frawley came and talked to us about it. He said the maximum you could do is $8. What I'm wondering is if there's other lake districts like over in Minnesota or anywhere in Wisconsin that are doing it, like roughly how much money is it generating for them? You think on some of the really busy weekends in the summer, it's probably 8 times however.
Well, right, and I know at pretty much every Twin Cities boat launch, you're paying if you're putting in a boat there. So input from Commissioner Jerry. He says his input is, I think we should charge for parking. We could use a parking app, similar type of thing. He suggests like $10 to launch, $8 is too small. He's thinking $10 to $20. That's Jerry's input. What do you think about that? Real-time input via chat?
Too high myself.
But
Well,
that's
I-
what it is in the cities is right. I think it's like $10 to $15 to launch up there. But yeah, it could be too rich for this area, but
what I envisioned was you could buy a season pass or you could buy it by the day.
yeah, that would make
And a
sense.
season pass could be, whatever.
Let's back up one step and, that the intent for the generation of revenue then is for improvement of the county parks. Because that's what, they're the property owners, right?
Mhm.
And that's where the money has to go to, right?
Not toward the park necessarily, but the ramp
Okay.
that,
That was my follow-up question is like for Chapney, up at Chapney or even, the other one on the north end of the lake,
Northwest Landing.
Northwest Land, they could use some shoreline stuff, maybe take down some of that bank or whatever, but we couldn't use it for that. We could only use it to improve the landing and the piers and.
Well, you
Those
could
kinds-
use it to make Champney accessible by boat again, couldn't you? So then you could use it to fund, well, removing all the stuff that makes it not accessible by a boat. Where you
Here's
can
the-
build a
here-
ramp into the dam.
I think they'd even see through that one.
well, and
Well, then there's
here's
no
the.
point in
Here's the
doing
thing
it.
I posted to Scott was I asked him, I go, here's a crazy idea, but. It would cost a lot to probably dredge out Chamney to get it to the boat. Dock area or that. Couldn't you build it out to the end where it already is and actually build that access all the way out, or you could put a pier all the way out there too.
Yeah.
That would go beyond that. Wouldn't solve the issue for all the other property owners there, but it would make that boat landing accessible
Well,
again.
at least
You're
we can
not,
tie up-
but you're gonna build a road out there? You're
Yeah,
gonna extend that ramp all the way out there? Just dig it
I-
out
I bet it'd be cheap, but I bet it'd be cheaper to do it that way.
Well, if you're.
and much less effective. And it's not gonna help any of the people that are losing their lake.
Right.
Which I don't know. I get wanting to be financially responsible, but at the end of the day, I think we have to accept that it's been filling in since they put the dam in, and it's gotten a heck of a lot worse since the mid-80s, and you can go online and watch that on a simple timeline. They were in the early 2000s, they had this talk, they talked to the Army Corps of Engineers, there was a bunch of momentum to do a dredging project, and then from what I've learned, the guy who was coordinating a lot of it, ran into some health issues and it kind of fell apart. And what's happened 20 years from now? Now it's further down, more filled in. So guess what? It's gonna cost some money to reverse that.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And any way we can generate money outside of taking it out of our own pocket and taxes, we need to try to do. And I would say that. I mean, I don't know, I'd love to have that conversation with the powers that be about why can't we use boat launch funds to reopen a boat launch?
I think that probably is possible, but I think that the funds that the boat launch would generate probably wouldn't be enough to,
They're not gonna cover the whole thing.
yeah.
But I think that's a fight for the county. When they get the money, they can fight with the DNR or whoever regulates that. Because there's only so many flower boxes you can put in.
So the
you know?
county is the one that's gonna receive all the money from these boat launch fees, and we don't get any control over how they spend it.
I don't
No,
believe so.
that wasn't, they would be open to like whatever we would kind of propose, like if like. It's the county's property, so they're gonna get some sort of portion of it, but the way I think the statutes are written. That money can only be used toward improvement of like a boat launch or whatever, if you're charging for a boat launch. If you charge for, like Jerry suggested, parking. Then that's kind of a different sort of thing. And it would be like, okay, what is the Lake District gonna do? You know, to kind of earn that other half of the money.
How in love is the county with having to own and maintain those properties?
I don't know if they're in love with it.
You know what
But,
I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
is that something where? I don't know if gifting it over to the Lake District is logical or not, but exploring that avenue. And then if there are ramps, those fees are ours, or the parking fees are ours. And then it goes into the Lake District account, and then the Lake District spends it on what we want to spend it on.
Well, it's possibility because just recently this year, Myron Park was gifted back to I think it's the town of Sand Creek. That was a little different though, because that was originally gifted from Sand Creek to the county when they didn't want to maintain it. And there's been a volunteer group for years that's been maintaining it, so it kind of made sense to transfer it back. It'd be worth pursuing to see if they would, because I mean,
Because it's
it's
just.
valuable
a cost of them,
property for the
right?
county,
Like,
so.
is it, yeah, what is? Yeah, I'd be interested to know how the county looks at it,
Mhm.
because is it just an expense to them, or are they using that as an asset?
I
In some
think-
way, shape or form?
From my experience, that it's looked on as an asset, as a community asset, because it's something that can not only draw visitors, but also residents to the area, and is a draw for that reason.
Yeah, and I guess I would think of it as. It would be an act of goodwill by the county. And then, the Lake District has to take it on, but to me, it's an act of goodwill in the county because. They understand that these fees that would be charged there are gonna go into improving one of the. Better natural resources that we have in Dunn County, well, other than in August, but that's what we're trying to make better. And so. I don't know, like, if we can be the ones to lead opening up Champney Park or opening up boat access to a bunch of those people up in the Red Cedar there, property values are gonna go up, which I'm sure they're not gonna skip out on taxing more. I think there's a valid argument that, especially if that's the way it works, that we're gonna go through all this work to get the fee thing put together. And then it's gonna go to somebody else and we lose all control over it like that. I don't think that's worth our time and effort to pursue.
Well, but what I hear Jim saying is that the county is open for suggestions.
Okay.
And that,
Yeah, it's,
that they are willing to whatever portion that is.
because look at it, almost look at it like the hockey arena.
Sure.
And I actually think that the county got that was a bad deal on their part, but they basically gave away the hockey arena to the hockey association to use it for whatever they want and charge fees for. Yet they still are pretty much responsible for a lot of the costs with the hockey arena. So I think that they would be, it's like if we came up with a proposal and said, okay, we would like to do this. We're gonna do, this aspect of it. Here's how we'd like to see those fees split because we're gonna take on this responsibility.
Sure.
We're going to mow those parks on a regular basis. We're going to make sure that people aren't, like, right now, Champney has a problem with people parking vehicles there permanently in where they shouldn't be, because it's not a whatever. It's not a parking lot. So that's the kind of stuff where it's like, okay, you guys are gonna do that, you guys can keep all the fees because you're maintaining it. So it's like, it's up to us to what we decide that we want to, do for what is that proposal? That's kind of what the gist was when I had the discussion with those guys, was like, bring us some ideas and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think I definitely am in favor of this, whether we term it boat launch fee or parking is probably something that we need to study a little bit too, because if that frees up the flexibility of how you can use the funds, then we need to make sure we phrase that right. But
Yeah.
that's what I would look for is. Yeah, I think it's a great way to try to raise some extra revenue.
Well, what
I don't think though. Before we decide. On parking fee or a launch fee, I think we need to be real careful about charging people for parking. Because what's gonna happen is everyone's gonna park on Pine Point Road up and down that whole road there on the 4th of July. And it's gonna drive those people nuts, and I don't blame them. And the same will happen up at Northwest Landing. And I think, how can I say this politely? I think we should skip that idea. All due respect, Jerry,
Which, oh, the parking?
the parking.
Yeah, and there are a lot of ways of getting around parking in that lot too, you know, guy wants to take his boat out and has his wife drop him off and he
That-
drives the boat home or drives the pickup
That,
home.
that's probably not gonna happen though, cause most of those guys are pulling up their pickups and leaving them there for the day and.
But I mean, well, first of all, I think we're far down the road again. here.
Yes, we are.
Yep,
And,
yep.
and Al, I think it's looking like we're not gonna solve this on the commission. It looks like another subcommittee to me.
Well, and also we'll have to involve Elk Point because everything's gonna affect them and they're. If we start charging a boat ramp fee, if they choose not to. Everybody and their mother is gonna go there, which actually they'll probably not want any either. So they may wanna say, okay, it's like, here's our plan. It'd probably be a good idea if you kind of match us, even if they just, cause they're paying for that launch, everything out of their pocket.
Right.
Yeah, and it's damaged
and-
right now.
Yeah, it's damaged right now. I
And
can't
I
take my
stopped
boat out
there,
this
I
year.
stopped there on Monday. I texted Sarah and I stopped on Monday and talked to Nikki and reminded them that it was on the agenda tonight.
Yeah,
So they know we're having the conversation.
yeah.
Okay, there was a question from the audience. Does the board mind if I call on the audience? To ask a question or make a comment? You had a question.
Just on the idea of enforcement, which I think we've talked about in every meeting that I've been into, is that how do we get to the something that we have to work with? What do we do? And if you haven't, so I really think it's a great idea to get some income into the
So Jerry isn't hearing any of this. So Deb brought up basically enforcement and how that would be enforced
Right,
is a very short version of her answer. So
right.
And if the county is going to get revenue from it, I'm pretty sure they'll figure out a way to enforce it.
I know when I was, I can't remember if it was Lake Mendota or Monona, cause I always get those backwards, but down by Madison. When you go on the Governor Nelson, I think it is boat launch, they just have, it's like a parking ramp. I think a gate comes down and you slide your card in there and then it comes up. So it's like, just like leaving the airport, you gotta pay. And I mean, there's gonna be some money into investing in that automation, but that's where my mind would go rather than trying to staff it and all of that is to invest in that fairly simple system.
Well, I think I'm sensing that there is a interest of the board to investigate further without making any commitments. Is that a?
Yep.
Yeah.
true? The question then becomes, we know the what, as the who and the how is now becomes the issue that I have. I have, we have 4 committees going with 7 people and many of us are on more than one committee. I would make this suggestion, to move it forward, not to dismiss it as an idea, but to be honest with you,
A little bit.
it's kind of like my budget. I can't spend more money without either increasing my revenue or taking something off my plate. So what I would do is say, is this something that we could do after we have a proposal from the buoy committee?
Or is it something that, cause the signage in the boat launches come up every time we have the meeting. Deb's been at the meeting, so she's, heard it. And so do we just
Roll it in?
roll it into it then? Because it's sort of part of it, because it keep, in fact, Pete knows this, cause last one, we went down that rabbit hole and we had to kind of dial it back because we were talking about that, but it was several people brought that up, so it could be, it kind of sort of ties into that, so.
I have no problem with it, as long as it doesn't dilute the buoy issue. In other words, I'd like to solve one problem instead of having 2 problems with no solution. You know what I mean? So I'm fine with that. I didn't want to voluntold tell you that would be a good idea.
I would,
but-
I would almost rather than doing that than having yet another
Yeah,
group and committee meeting and just make it so, I mean, cause. I mean, Grant had some great ideas and, you know, and even if you just wanted to participate now and then or
Yep.
with it. That'd
Yep.
be great, and Jerry did too. Let's see if he has.
Doing boat launch fees is not a critical item for this group. It's something that I think we should consider. But I don't know if this is, if we really need to do it right away.
that's where like having an idea of how many dollars it would really
Yeah.
truly bring in throughout the course of a year.
So
Would help
what I'm,
prioritize that.
what
I have
I'm
no
kind
idea
of
what to
thinking
think.
is that the buoy committee is gonna have an end, you know, so we could come up with some kind of.
Potentially,
Yeah.
Because-
And I thought you were talking about January would be the end of the buoy committee, and I don't believe that, but I think the buoy committee can work on the buoys and then segue into boat launch after the work on the buoys is done. I think it's just a natural almost, and rather than set up a new separate committee, why don't we kind of
Assign that to that committee.
assign that to committee for future reference. for
Right.
future
Well,
work.
I think there's some, like Jim was saying, I think there's some overlap with the enforcement. Because you got, you're gonna, it's the same issue, just a different end. And so, how that's all going to work.
And if you can really only use the money to improve the boat launches, well, then your signage and all that stuff makes a lot of sense to be paid for from those fees.
Well, and it can dovetail nicely. Now, I have to, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying, is this a direction that the committee is in favor of going? So in other words, I mean, I just gotta say it, because if I don't say it, somebody else is going to. Is this a direction that we wanna go?
meaning is it a direction, I think it's a direction we want to explore
Okay,
at the very least.
okay,
I think it's worth a conversation with the county.
Especially what Tom said earlier about that people were up, that was a thing that came up, that it wasn't fair that only lake owner, property owners were basically paying for everything. And because I know I watched the people that bring they truck in there and they boat every single day and they don't live anywhere near the lake.
Mhm.
It would be good for those folks to contribute a little bit toward, they're getting enjoyment and usage out of the lake and on a regular basis. So
right. Okay, I just, I'm not being critical. I'm just saying what we agreed to do charts our course forward.
Mhm.
And I just want to be that little voice that says, are we sure that's the direction that we want? Because
Yeah.
now is the time to turn the ship.
Jerry says he likes taking over the ramps and he says the signage can also promote the Lake District.
Right.
So,
On the other hand, is what you're saying, are you trying to say that we might be getting diverted from what our primary focus should have been at the very beginning, which was a condition of the lake itself?
I think we have, and part of the strategic plan and process is to define who we are. And I know we've had people speak to our group about, okay, what's your charge? What are you doing? Okay, so we started out with cleaning up the lake. And now we have 4 committees going. And obviously different directions. I'm not being critical. I'm just reminding us that as we gather this work, those boundaries become where we chart a course. It's easier to say no and not go down that road than to get down that road and say, well, we don't want to go down, we don't want to be here, and then have to come back. See what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so I'm just saying that we have to be mindful. I think this is I think personally, it fits with safety and protection of our lake. If that's one of the things, that's one of my things is the protection. And that means erosion, that means good facilities, that means providing a quality experience for people that are using the lake, whether you live here or not. But I just want to be the voice that says, is this where we want to go, or do we tread cautiously? I'm just putting it out there. That's all I'm doing.
I agree with you, Al. I think we're getting so many different fingers out there that, we're either gonna overload ourselves or forget our main reason for being here. And, the grant process, we just barely touched on that now, and that's kind of where the money is. And I think we have to be careful of taking on any additional work. That's just my opinion, but I think we're getting in a little too deep.
Well, and I think the discussions are good. I think we have to be purposeful on our actions. And one of the things that I'm really, really trying to be mindful of is that we don't burn ourselves out. What I don't want to do is have one person on this committee be here for 10 years and then have 70 different other people that have, come on, burned out, and then gone on to some other things. And that just doesn't speak for the longevity of what we're trying to accomplish. I only bring it up because I had to bring it up.
Good middle ground probably is to let a couple of these committees run their course.
Yep.
Get the answers, and then have this be like right on top of the list as the next thing we should tackle.
Well,
And
because we've had it in this discussion, I can tell you it's going to be in the strategic plan. I mean,
yeah,
and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but it's a solution to some of our issues. And so we have to decide where it's going to fit into the plan of work.
I do agree with Jim though, in the sense that if you think back to the annual meeting, a lot of the people that made comments was something about it shouldn't all come out of us as Lake District owners' pockets. They said it in a bunch of different ways, get grants, get the government to pay for it, or whatever, however it was phrased. But I mean, that was a really common theme that the people that we're kind of representing, or whatever you'd want to call it, that was something that was really important to them. So if we can find ways to offset those costs, good. And
Yeah, and
Just don't have
just
time
because
probably
we're
for us to do
investigating it, doesn't mean we have to take it on this year.
Yeah, when we get to the survey, Pete had a really good suggestion, or Chuck, about what people's expectations are in years.
Right.
I just, some of the stuff that is gonna take a couple of years to put together for us. And if people think it's gonna happen by next summer,
Mhm.
we need to have a longer conversation. Okay, so Jim, would you add that to your task list on your committee, please? I hear that's the direction that we would like to go.
Yeah, well, then with the idea that it will be something after we kind of have gone and made our determination on buoys and
Right.
so.
So I don't know that we need a motion, but are we in consensus and Jim has said that he's willing to put that on his committee's agenda?
You're a good guy, Jim.
Well, I also just know that Pete will say this, and I think Deb was also listening at the meeting. It's like, it kept coming up anyway, the boat launches and the ramps at the meeting. So it would just be kind of a natural thing. So,
Well, and I think it would be nice though, too, to have Elk Point a part of that discussion, so that.
I like Tom, I've reached out to her a couple
Right.
of times to invite her to the meetings, and so hopefully,
Well,
because it would help.
And if they're busy, maybe we can reach out and maybe we can have a field trip and go up there.
Well, I was gonna say, maybe the next, one of our buoy meetings will have an Elk Point instead of the Pioneer, because it could, then it'd be a little bit easier for them to do it.
Yeah,
I was
that's a good
thinking
idea.
maybe a non-notice meeting some afternoon
Happy hour.
after ice fishing.
There we go.
You know, I gotta mix a little pleasure with business. Or is that business with pleasure? Okay. Are we done with
Okay.
that subject?
Yep.
And you have that in the minutes to reflect that?
The No Wake Zone Committee will investigate this issue following the completion of their tasks on No Wake.
Perfect. I'm assuming we're done with that topic? I have to say it, that topic took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. But I think whatever it takes. Approval for the expenditure of Survey Monkey and a Zoom account. I put that proposal in and on the agenda. The Survey Monkey is the electronic format of to survey the residents of the lake community. There's two different, the basic level is $468 per year, but that allows us 15,000 responses. Unlimited, we can do an unlimited number of surveys. And it's just an annual fee. It is in the grant. So eventually we'll be reimbursed, hopefully, about 78% of that. But, the reason why I use Survey Monkey is that I'm familiar with that and I've used it in the past. The other thing that I like about it is that you can develop a QR code for each different survey that you do. And so we don't have to send out the survey. Really, all we'd have to do when we survey the residents is send out a postcard with that QR code on. Or where they could get where they could log in to take the survey. And anybody now with a smartphone, and people can do this right from their smartphone. They don't even need a computer. The other one was Zoom, and Zoom Pro. I know Jim's been using his own, account to record the meetings and things like that. Again, part of the grant, is that we have our own Zoom account. I put it in the grant, or I shouldn't say we put it in the grant to be able to communicate with other people, to bring other people in for speakers and things like that, as much as we can also use it to broadcast our meetings, or however Jim wants to use that. But the one that I'm proposing is $149 a year. It's $149, 100 attendees can, at one time, 30 hours per meeting. It has whiteboard and chat on it. So I'm sure that's the basic one. I used to have my own account also. That's the one I had, and Zoom is about as easy to use as anything, so.
Yep, that's what we're using right now.
And it fits with everything that we do, so. Now, I will say this, remember, on one hand, I said it was in the grant, on the other hand, I reported last meeting, remember that they have more grants than they have money. So I just want you to be aware of that.
No guarantees.
There's no guarantees,
Yeah.
but, I think it's something that we have to do to use our business. And again, with the planning process, we have always said that we're gonna do the planning process whether we get the grant or not.
I think it's money well spent. Especially when we are limited to what time we can hold our meeting here. 5 o'clock is pretty early for a lot of people to get here because of their work schedule. This would add transparency certainly to our meetings. So,
And I
and
apologize.
Survey Monkey is just a good tool to use.
Yeah.
To get people's feedback.
No, I talked to, Dr. Lee at UW Stout, and she has said that she'd help us in the future with surveys, and they use a different tool. But because we're in the process and want to get planning done, I don't want to take the time to meet with our students, to get them all. That's just another layer in the process, and I just thought we'd be better off ourselves. We could try it for a year. If we use it once and we're done, then we don't have to do it next year. And we can have Stout help us.
That's good.
I apologize for not asking for a motion first, but I will entertain a motion now before I got kind of we're kind of informal. So.
I will make a motion that we move forward with Survey Monkey and a subscription to Zoom.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Jerry said aye.
Oh, cool.
He said I with a capital I, not the IAYE, as would be appropriate. So.
Well, and that's the other thing that this will allow us to do is once we get set up on some of this stuff, maybe we can do like Jerry's he's wherever Jerry is, and we can take, and then he can participate in the meeting also in a real way.
Yeah,
And we do have, was it March that we don't have this room?
April.
April, okay, so it could really come in handy then.
All right. Review of the Tainter Lake resident survey and outline of the strategic planning process. I put both of those in the packet. Chuck and Pete and I sat down, put together the survey. The survey is about 50% of what they did out, or what came out of UW Stevens Point through the Lakes Group. I really don't know what their formal title is, but it's the extension, it's the DNR, and it's Stevens Point, all kind of rolled into one. And they're Lakes and Streams people, and they're kind of our guiding association. And I say that loosely. Anyway, they did this survey around the state. The format was kind of clunky in the paper form because they did it in, they did it in it's really weird the way they did it. So don't worry about the pagination, and when it goes in the electronic form, it'll be fine. But basically that's the survey. I think the first three questions 2 and questions 3 are some pretty important ones to start to identify what the people, what they see as the real issue. I always find that strategic planning is good in that you try to align what we as hopefully group leaders, our expectations align with our constituency. It's always good to kind of be working on what other people want you to work on. There's some demographical information in there that I think is nice to know. There's some things in there about people's expectations also. So it's a first chance at looking at what people think and sending it out. And you don't have to attend meetings. You just have to answer your questions, and it gives us an idea where we should be going, what we should be doing, and looking at. Now, the next step to that survey in the planning process is to take and use that survey to guide 3 or 4 meetings with community members in person. So in other words, in the planning process, it's really, really difficult to bring people together and say, well, what do you want? Because what you'll do is if you bring 100 people together, you'll have 100 different, well, here's what I want. We do the survey first. We take and tabulate what everybody thinks as their, as the issues. We put that information out, and then what we say is, then we analyze that as a group, as a leadership group, but then the community analyzes that. And then they start to say, well, what are our priorities? So then our priorities are guided through our strategic planning process by what people are telling us. And that gives people a direct input into what we're trying to accomplish. That also guides our work. Now, in the perfect world, it would have been nice to have the strategic plan before we were talking about 4 subcommittees going, and it would have guided our work. But I've thought this through, and I've come to, I had in the middle of the night one night, I kind of had some thoughts on how to get what we're doing to roll in, to kind of coalesce and bring those all together. And right now, all we have as commissioners to focus our work on is what people are telling us. Well, once we have an instrument, it'll be a lot easier to take and start guiding our work. So that's how I envision that happening, is to take this strategic, or this survey, send it out to people, bring it back, tabulate it, then have 3 or 4 community meetings. And I'm saying it's the same meeting 3 times. So if you miss one, you're not lost in meeting 2. So it's just a repeat. So you're gathering the same information from as many people as we can. If we have 150 people at 3 meetings, we'll have 4. If we have 50, 20, 10, we'll have 3. And we'll just kind of gauge it by there. We'll take that information in. Then I see us as commissioners having a work session where we take that information and then we put our own information as commissioners in, because we're going to be concerned about budget. We're going to be concerned about timelines. And so we gather input. And so what we'll have is, when we get done with that process, before we start writing the strategic plan, we will have survey from everybody that lives on the lake will have the potential, or has an address, and can write in and give their 2 cents worth. We'll have community meetings, and then we'll have a meeting of this group as kind of a work session, just working on that. So that's 3 points to put together this. It seems like a lot of work. It really isn't that much work. The work comes in the writing. I'll do the writing along with Pete and Chuck. And they're good at keeping things on task. And then by then, at the spring of the year, we should, or by at least June, we should have a strategic plan. My goal is to have a written draft of the strategic plan by the time I get to work outside in my gardens and things like that. Okay, because once I hit outside, then I lose time.
Yeah.
Kids are gonna want to put the docks in and go skiing and things like that, so.
Al, is the strategic planning the same as a lake management plan? Or are they two different things?
Two different things. A lake management plan is very, very specific as to how you're going to manage certain topics of. I can tell you right now from my aspect or end of it is one of the pieces on the strategic plan will be to develop a lake management plan. That'll be a part of our strategic plan. We need that to do the weeds. We need that if we're gonna tackle the sediment, we're gonna need that. We're gonna need the outside consultancy, and this is where the consultant comes in. As they will start identifying resources, they'll start identifying costs, so we'll start to, on our great ideas, they'll start to put some parameters around those things. And so what I would suggest we do is we first write the strategic plan. Then we take, in the next round of grant applications next fall, we write for a management plan. And if we have a strategic plan and we have our organization structured around the strategic plan, our chances of getting a management plan are a lot better than if Chuck, Pete, and Al are writing this grant that says, well, give us $25,000 to, develop a plan.
Yeah.
And so that just, it shows the level of sophistication that we're going to need.
Got it.
That's a good question. Thank you. Anybody have any comments?
I have to back up a little here, Al.
Yeah,
I'm looking for the survey, the latest version of the survey that you're talking about, and I see there's one in the,
I sent it in an email.
in the packet email, right? But
Yes.
that was the original Wisconsin survey. That's what I got.
Did I send the wrong one? Well, if it is, I will correct that. Huh, you're right, Pete. I apologize. I sent the wrong survey out. I will send you a corrected version of the survey. And I apologize for that. Oh. Well, I will get the correct one out before I leave tonight. And we're open for comments, and everything that you said, I put in, and everything that Chuck said, I put in.
Yeah, I felt really bad because I didn't see
Your stuff in there?
my stuff.
Cried yourself to sleep.
Honest, I can show you my notes where I said Pete, and I put down what you said, so I hung on every word, Pete.
That won't work.
So I might have missed it, but when is the goal to get the survey distributed by? And then how is it being distributed? Mailed to each address within the district? Is there a way to like put an online form of it on our Facebook page or
Yeah.
email addresses we have available to us?
Yeah,
Good.
we'll mail it out to each, and I plan to get our committee going on that after, Christmas vacation. It's been a little hectic lately, and so hopefully we're settling in to do some ice fishing and snowshoeing, before too long, but,
That shouldn't be long. Of course, 50 this weekend might not move in the right direction.
yeah, well, I'm afraid that what this does is gonna push it to May.
Yeah, that
And I'll
could
be
be.
snowshoeing in May. So that's the direction we're headed. Any course corrections, get a hold of myself or Chuck or Pete, and we'll get back to you. And I apologize for sending the wrong one out. Usually I review what I send out, and I was under the gun. And I didn't, I apologize. I'll get you the
So
correct-
one thing Jerry mentioned was just capturing emails associated with addresses and names. We have I think probably that's referring to, we have kind of our master list, which probably doesn't have any emails associated with it. We should like add a column so that those get added as well to our voter, the list that we use for our checking people in.
right.
I think that's what you're saying, probably Jerry. Jerry's chatting with me, so
Right. Yeah,
yes, that's what he means.
okay. So, explain to me a little bit more what,
So when during the annual meeting, we've got that basically the master list.
right,
And there's probably not a column there for email addresses. Let's add a column.
oh,
And as we're doing the survey, we can add emails for everybody. So we have one additional point of contact. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to add everybody's,
right,
but we can add a good chunk of them.
right, right. Sure, we can do that. I'm game, if you're game.
And rather than waiting until then, can you add that on the survey? Ask them to provide their email
To
address?
share our email. I have, yeah, we can do that on the survey, as a comment, an open comment. And then we can keep that and have a distribution list. The only problem with distribution lists is a lot of times, they end up in people's spam. So that, we're gonna have to have a disclaimer that if you put your name on this, then you gotta check your spam file once in a
Right.
while to make sure that,
Or add or the email address, the Tainter Lake District email address to the white list,
right,
if they even know what that is.
Do people want to be anonymous or not on this survey?
oh, yeah, that's true too.
Well, do we want anonymous survey people? Cause
I-
we could have somebody, if we're doing an online one, someone could just spam the heck out of it with cause they have a pet thing. I'm especially thinking of some people that get into that Facebook group and have a particular axe to grind. And so they get a bunch of their friends who ping it all for one thing, and next thing we know, we're building like a balloon stand by the dam. Because that's what came in that's the problem with it, like anonymous type survey type stuff, so.
Yeah.
A balloon stand would be nice, but.
Top priority.
On the other hand, in one of our questions you have in there, what would you like to do? Would you like to be a member of a committee or kind of like to know who those people are?
Right,
When they do that. Maybe there's a way of saying, okay, if you're interested in working with us and volunteering, please provide your name at the bottom of this
Yeah,
and email address, but
And yeah, and Jerry says that he thinks real names associated with it are important.
yeah, they don't have to fill in their email, so.
No, they don't
Yeah,
have to.
So I think it's a risk we're taking. Yep.
well, we get 15,000 responses, so if we get 14,000 responses, we'll know that somebody's out there chirping away.
yeah.
Chirping.
Okay. Let me get back to my agenda here. So we will continue, to meet, Pete and Chuck. We should, get together after the meeting and, create a date for an upcoming, committee meeting. We've identified speakers for upcoming, meetings. We already had that conversation. I don't necessarily see, unless you guys have had an epiphany, somewhere between the beginning of this meeting and now. If not, I'm gonna move on to the next meeting is January something,
Eighteenth.
January 18th. Topics for the agenda. Try to line up a speaker.
Well, we're gonna have to check in with all of the ad hoc committees, certainly. Hopefully we will get 4 reports.
Follow up with where the survey is at.
Yeah, hopefully the survey will be ready to launch,
Tribute.
let's say that if that's on the eighteenth, let's say, let's be prepared to launch the survey January 19th.
Yeah, yeah.
We going to mail the survey ourselves? Or are we going to have L&M do it?
L&M,
L&M, so do we need a price?
yep. That's why we'll have it after the meeting.
Okay, we
We'll
can
get-
vote on approving that.
You get your approval and I'll have that all ready to launch after that. No,
No proposed agenda items from Jerry.
okay,
Give us plenty to do. We already got a lot of things in motion,
Yeah,
so
that's fine.
following up with
Yes.
the 4 things we got in motion and
I-
getting a survey out, that seems
right,
good with me.
Alright. Okay. If there, and always if anything happens, now remember, January 19th, like 2 weeks before that is when I usually post that, so if you want something. We can amend the agenda up until 24 hours in advance. But I would just not like to pull that trigger every week or every month. And I'd save that for something that came up and that's not our normal operating procedure. So if we could, if you need, if anything comes to mind or after the first week, you have some, your committee meetings and you need something on the agenda, let me know right away. And then I'll get that on the agenda. Okay? Is there anything else we need to know? If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
There's been a motion to adjourn
Second,
and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
hey,
Yeah.
We're out of here. We're done.
Merry Christmas.
By the way, I think with Robert's Rules of Order, you don't have to necessarily have a motion to adjourn. I think you have to have a motion to stay and play or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everybody has a motion to adjourn, but.
Who seconded it?
Right. Hey,